Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, and we are broadcasting to the world live from Phoenix, Arizona. Once again, we are diving into Abby and Libby's case, also known as the Delphi murders. Today, we're going to go over your basics, Investigations 101, Victimology, Criminology. We're going to look at this case and we're going to do it by the book. And then after that, well, we're going to look at it that way. We're going to throw our gut feelings, our intuition, we're going to throw all that to the wayside. And we're going to view this case. We're going to do it by the book. After that, we're going to get rid of all of that and we're going to focus on what our gut tells us. And we're going to flex that intuition muscle. And throughout, we're going to have a discussion about everything that we talk about. What's up, Karen? Good morning, Diamonds. What's up, Delulu? CJK. Growing Crazy, how are you? Oh, YouTube took my live stream down. They said I violated their policy. I think it had to do with that video I showed of the news reporter getting shot. I tried to appeal it, and it took about 5 minutes, and they said nope. So all that hard work is down the drain. But it is what it is. What's going on, Karen Hick? She Warrior, good to see you. Ooh, party time. Yep, Growing Crazy, we lost it. I was pretty pissed, but whatever. It's my fault, right? I wasn't thinking. Hey, Cindy, how you doing? I mean, I'm lucky they didn't give me a strike, honestly. So what I want to do is I want to approach this case. We're going to do everything by the book, right? We're going to explain what the rules of investigating are, the rules of victimology, and the rules of criminology. And we're going to do it all by the book. We're not going to do any theoretical. We're not going to do anything like that. Speculation. It's going to be 100% factual. And then we're going to go ahead and flip that upside down. And we're going to have a discussion based on what our intuition and our gut is telling us and why intuition is so important when it comes to investigations. I mean, we're already here, right? We're already here. We're already established. We may not be former law enforcement. We may not have specific training, but we put in plenty of hours to know a little bit about what we're talking about. CJK says YouTube allows threats and calls for death and doxing and harassing, then does that crap? Ridiculous. Yeah, I was a little shocked by it, especially considering we put 2 hours in of some pretty good information and then we just lost it. Because of it was like a 2-minute video that I showed at the 1 hour and 30-minute mark. It's like, why didn't you just remove that part or give me the option to remove it? But whatever. Camaro lover, good to see you, stranger. Hey, Anna, a lone female in a hiking area can be a target. Rachel Morin, for instance. We females believe we are safer with a friend, but obviously 2 females does not always equal safety, Abby and Libby. Yep. I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to touch on that. It's perceived security is what it is. And I remember starting out covering this case, and we heard all the time, oh, it's very rare for two individuals to be targeted and murdered. Well, yeah, to be murdered, but to be sexually assaulted happens all the time. There's people that will walk up to a playground and they'll force 3 or 4 girls into the woods. But yeah, it happens to pairs of women, pairs of young girls constantly. You know, all it takes is one of these predators with these impulse issues, you know, to have a day filled with drinking and drugs, and then they go out into the public and they just can't control themselves. Yeah, we might I might just make a video growing crazy. I might just make a quick video using that information and just kind of make it real quick. Maybe like an hour long. Camaro, after the trial, I had to take a break. It was getting too much. I don't know how the families have been able to go through this and stand firm like they have. Now they're very strong folks. And unfortunately, Richard Allen didn't give them a choice, right? He didn't give them the choice like, hey, you think you can handle this if I destroy your lives? He destroyed his own family. All because he's a sick piece of shit. Hey, cheeks, nobody's safe, honestly. Children, women, people always seem to forget about men, and men are not exempt exploitation and violence. There was a serial killer. I forgot his name. Well, there was a man in Florida who was in the restroom and he had been drinking heavily. He could hardly walk. And there happened to be another man there who was just released from prison and apparently was known in prison for sexual assault. Well, he raped this man. We're talking about a grown man, a large individual who was taken advantage of. He was thrown into a bathroom stall and raped. You know, I think it might even be a little bit tougher for young boys to come forward. Anna says it has been said that abducting two children at once is extremely rare, etc. It's not, well, I mean, abducting and taking them somewhere else, but it's not rare for them to, well, I mean, technically it's abducting them, you know, it's kidnapping, but they're not taking them away. They're taking them to a secondary location, committing a sexual assault, you know, threatening them with a knife, maybe assaulting them, attacking them, but then not killing them. And that is not rare. It happens quite often. Yeah, it's true, Cindy. I feel like if something like that happened to me as a child, I wouldn't say anything. I would just live with it and bury it deep down. And I know some of you have done that. I mean, that's the issue, right? The evil doesn't care what it does to people. It doesn't care if it destroys you, destroys your future, destroys who you were going to be. That's the whole purpose of evil. It's all about jealousy. It's taking what God has created and doing their best to corrupt it, to pervert it. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start off looking at the rules of investigating. We're going to do it all by the book. Then after we do that, we're going to throw it by the wayside, and we're going to reimagine it through the eyes of an intuitive. Those of you out there with great instincts, who have lived your lives trusting your gut like I have. I've had friends that aren't alive today. They've been murdered, drug overdoses, taking their own lives. Some are in prison for a really long time. Most, of course, are successful and enjoying their lives, but without those instincts that I was blessed with, I don't think that I would be where I am today. Okay, so let's start with Investigations 101 according to Sleuth Intuition. What's up, Vegas? It's all good in the hood. It is all good, my friend. Okay. A murder investigation is a complex process that involves several key steps to identify the perpetrator, gather evidence, and build a case for prosecution. Now we're going to look at the basics here. We're going to start with the initial response and scene preservation. Law enforcement officers are typically the first to respond after a murder is reported. Their priority is to secure the crime scene and prevent contamination of evidence. This involves restricting access, identifying witnesses, and ensuring the safety of everyone present. What's going on, Beth? Thank you, Cindy. All right, who is the lucky winner? All right, you guys have anything to add to that? Right, initial response and scene preservation. Law enforcement officers are typically the first to respond after a murder is reported. Their priority is to secure the crime scene to prevent contamination of evidence. This involves restricting access, identifying witnesses, and ensuring the safety of everyone present. Pretty simple, right? Not a simple job. It's not an easy task. But as far as understanding, you guys get it, right? I'm doing well, Beth. Thank you. I am doing well. Doing very well. Thank you. I don't think I used any big words. Maybe contamination. That's pretty common. All right, crime scene examination. Investigators, often including forensic experts, meticulously examine the scene. They document everything through photographs, sketches, and notes. Evidence like fingerprints, DNA, blood, hair, saliva, weapons, and other physical traces is collected and preserved for analysis. Which is extremely important, right? And I think it was me, at least I know I was talking to Charles about the Zodiac killer. So they weren't big into crime scene examination. They didn't take soil samples. They didn't do any of that stuff. They weren't really concerned about the DNA. There wasn't a real protocol. So we kind of discussed how the Zodiac today would have most likely been captured early on under today's circumstances. Yep, fibers as well. What's up, Cyber? All right, you guys have anything to add to that? Who determines what is to be tested, such as hair in Abby's hand? It's a good question. I'm assuming it would be the consensus of including the lead investigators. I think they did test it somewhat. They knew that it belonged to a family member of Libby. They knew that for a fact. But also, you have to preserve this evidence. Like, for instance, there might be a small bit of blood. Every time you test it, you're losing part of your sample. So you have to be very strategic of how many times you're testing it, when you test it. I'm assuming you want to wait until you have a viable suspect in custody. Yeah, how you doing, V? Happy Wednesday to you guys. Yeah, touch DNA would have been everywhere. Didn't he leave a knife at the scene as well? Yeah, I guess the CSI team. Hey, Christine. Okay, we're moving on from crime scene examination to autopsy and the medical examination. Marie says 100% sleuth. Things can only be tested so many times, in some cases, just once. Hey, what's up, Andy? Today is going well, my friend. How you doing? I don't know, Karen. I have a lot to say about the FBI, but probably at the second half of this live stream, we can talk about that. That's more part of the intuitive side of today's live stream. Zodiac never left a knife anywhere. He primarily shot victims as he did cab driver Paul Stein. Yeah, but he did stab some of his victims. Bad actors, good to see you. Michael Peasley. He was part of Grit. It's a gang task force where they would recruit local law enforcement, kind of deputize them into the FBI, like Ferenczi. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, we had to make some improvements. I had to fix my connection and swap out my mic. Yeah, when it came to the Zodiac, investigators referred to it as evolving. You know, he was having fun, experimenting. Yeah, he was an excellent witness as well, necessary. There was a call that came into, I think it was a news station, and this person was claiming to be the Zodiac, and they were able to record the call. They brought in Mike, and he said, no, that doesn't sound anything like him. Hey, Timmy. Yep, that's true. One of them survived. The girl actually saved his life. She untied him. If it wasn't for her, he would have died there. All right, let's move on to autopsy and medical examination. The body is examined by a coroner or medical examiner to determine the cause of death. For example, gunshot, stabbing, strangulation, time of death, if possible, and any defensive wounds or clues or other clues. This helps establish a timeline and the nature of the crime. You guys have anything to add to the autopsy and medical examination? Yeah, definitely because of the response time too, Anna. He most likely would have had a cell phone on him. He would have got untied, and then instead of having to crawl all the way to the road or getting, the attention of boaters nearby, he would have just flipped open his cell phone and made a call to 911. And also, they didn't preserve that crime scene. They I think it was the park ranger who actually was a suspect for a moment in time, based on the description of the killer. He kind of fit it. His voice matched, and even the victim said he got chills when the park ranger came by or he heard his voice. But he could have been paranoid. Could have had something going on with his PTSD or something. But the park ranger came to the crime scene, collected everything, and just threw it in a box before the investigative team even had an opportunity to examine it. Oh yeah, I was getting Mike confused with let's see, somebody gave me the name up here. Brian Hartnell. I don't know, Vegas. That's the first time I've ever heard that. So we heard a lot about the autopsy and the medical examination of Abby and Libby. That's how we started hearing about the box cutter, remember? Yep, Brian Hartnell. Karen Hicks says, I don't understand how Richard Allen didn't leave DNA. See, that's a huge misconception. Only 10% of murder scenes even contain the DNA of the killer. 10%, actually less than 10%. So finding the killer's DNA at the crime scene is not something that they're likely going to do, according to statistics. Me too, Evil. Me too. I don't know. There's a lot of people who think that the Zodiac was done by two people that were helping each other establish alibis. Kind of like the sons of Sam instead of the son of Sam. Bad actor sleuth. Did you always think that the girls were probably lured by Anthony Shots and KK was possibly involved? Well, I've learned not to jump all over these types of things, you know. So I don't do anything initially. I look at the information. I say no at first. My gut said yes, but I don't always share with you guys what my gut is saying. So I did not always think that. I always tell people don't jump on the bandwagon, don't do this, don't follow the crowd. Do your own investigative work. So no, I didn't believe that until the evidence and my intuition pointed me in that direction. So the answer to that is yes and no. Vegas says, Sleuth, did anybody find any foot tracks of the girls and Richard Allen going down the hill? If they did, they didn't talk about it. I heard about footprints. The group of people who found Abby and Libby initially reported seeing footprints. Kelsey mentioned footprints to a reporter early on. I don't know. I feel like it would be difficult. Because if it's too muddy, your feet's going to sink into the mud and then it's going to kind of suction up and distort the shape of your foot. I think the best chance of getting footprints would be just after they cross the creek where it's kind of sandy. But once you get up into the wooded area, there's just so many leaves and twigs. I feel like you're not really leaving a good print. So it might be difficult. YouTube bad actors. It's amazing how one creator just figured that out and thinks he's the first one to think of it. It's okay. I know who you're talking about, bad actors. People steal my work all the time. Doesn't bother me at all. As a matter of fact, some of the biggest problems with law enforcement are people not sharing information. They let their ego get in the way. And that was a big problem when it came to the Zodiac and the Night Stalker. Hey, this is our action. We found this. We're not going to share it with you because then you're going to steal that information and you're going to take the case further. Well, isn't that the goal? To take things further, to get closer to the suspect? So I don't mind with that. I don't even mind if they claim it for their own. We all know. We all know the truth. Necessary Evil says David Berkowitz, who is the son of Sam, right? One of the sons of Sam, but officially the son of Sam. Definitely was a loner. What's up, Jeff? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó, vato? That's why he blamed his neighbor and dog. Yeah, that was creepy. All of that. That whole story will shake you to your core. Author Drew Beeson has done fantastic research implicating Arthur Lee Allen's friend Don Chaney as being involved in the Zodiac crimes. Yeah, Drew Beeson. There's a YouTube content creator also who has done great work on the Son of Sam. He hasn't been very active lately. V. Murray says, I think they had one partial print, hence the Packers lockdown, or am I wrong? Well, there was a Packers lockdown, and after there was a bomb threat, which is tied to B. Phillips, right? He also had court that day. B. Phillips had court that was canceled on the day that the girls died at about 8 a.m. So who knows? Did he show up there? Did he participate? All we know is that he's known for calling in bomb threats. And shortly after the murders, I think it might have even been the same day as like the first presser that they held on the 22nd. There was another bomb threat called into Packers. And for whatever reason, you had Tony Leggett show up to Packers and emptied out a locker. In my opinion, that locker belonged to Garrett Kurtz, because he was fired the same day that the girls were killed. He said he was so high that he doesn't remember what he was doing. And he also has ties to the bridge and to Ron Logan. So I just assumed that they cleared his locker. Okay, let's move on to witness and suspect identification. Detectives interview witnesses, family members, and anybody in the vicinity to gather statements and identify potential suspects. Suspicious behavior, motives, or connections to the victim are explored. Yeah, they took that boot. I might have that video. Let me see. I know I have a folder titled Bomb Threat. It could be in there. Yep, here it is. Let me share my screen with you fine folks. You guys remember Alexis McAdams before she went mainstream? She was killing it. All right. Police still sweeping Delphi for evidence in murders. Police brought these boots in to analyze, not key evidence at this point. Okay, police bomb threat called in to Indiana Packers in Delphi, February 22nd. See, I was correct about the date. Same day as the first press conference. It makes you wonder if the killer called that in. Little cat and mouse. Production at Indiana Packers Corp. in Delphi was interrupted Wednesday afternoon after the company's employment office in Lafayette received a bomb threat. Carroll County Sheriff's deputies were called to the meatpacking plant at 1:10 p.m. February 22nd on a report of a threat that had been phoned in to an office in Lafayette in which the caller threatened of 2 bombs, according to police. Interesting. 2 bombs, right? Not just one, 2. 2 victims in the Delphi case. A lot of intuition is pattern recognition. Something that your mind is doing automatically. Carroll Sheriff Tobe Lesenby said police remained at the scene until shortly after 4 p.m., helping Indiana Packers management and other law enforcement search the plant. The search turned up nothing, Lesenby said. And here's a quote from him. I think somebody must have thought we had a bunch of downtime, Lesenby said, and just as police activity at the plant wound down. He clarified that the activity was unrelated to law enforcement's ongoing investigation into the murder of 2 teenage Delphi girls. Carroll County deputies are working with state police and FBI on the double homicide case. The agencies had held a press conference Wednesday morning regarding the homicides. So, right after they hold the press conference, there's a bomb threat.
And you can hear that determination in the Indiana State Police officers' voices, saying they're going to do whatever it takes to find the person that took these girls' lives. And as police continue to sort through hundreds of tips they're getting on the case, they're also still combing Delphi for evidence.
All I know is that those aren't size 6s. Those look like some size 12s. I don't know. There's something else in there too. I can't tell what that is. Vegas Sleuth, if you were in charge of the Delphi case, what would you do after you heard the girls went missing? I don't know, man. Hindsight is 2020, right? And it really depends. How many cases did I have of missing girls that didn't end up murdered? That were just maybe at a boyfriend's house or fell asleep at a friend's home, or afraid to come home because, they're going to get in trouble for something. It really depends. It'd be easy for me to say, oh, I'd lock the whole city down and I'd get the FBI in there and I'd start searching phones and doing this, but hindsight is 2020. That's what I always thought before Richard Allen. Garrett Kurtz was the Packers boot. Sorry, getting off subject. No, you're right on subject because that's exactly what I think it is. I think those boots belong to Garrett Kurtz. They suspected Ron Logan from the very beginning. They knew that he had connections to Ron Logan and that he was already a suspect. Yeah, Kate, but that was after, they were already searching the river and there was dozens and upon dozens of people walking around that area. So, I mean, we don't know whose footprints those were. But the testimony during the trial was that I can't remember his name. What was it, Jim or something? He's the one that saw the girls for the first time. And the reason he found them was he saw footprints that led him to the clothing in the creek. And once he saw the clothing in the creek, he looked up. Yep, and we'll save that for the second half of the stream. I got a lot. I got a lot to say about the FBI. You guys know that. Hey, Jerry. What's up? How you doing? Growing crazy. In the crime scene photos, you can see how far Libby was moved. It wasn't very far. It looks like maybe 10 feet at the most, if that. It almost appears as if the killer didn't like where she fell. It was almost as if he said, well, I need to hide her behind this tree. And all of the sticks that he placed on top of the bodies were shielding them from the private drive, which kind of ties in with the whole van scenario, right? He's afraid of the van. He's afraid somebody's going to see from over there. So the reason he moved Libby was to pull her behind a tree. And you can see it in the crime scene photos. You can see exactly how far and where she was. And in the crime scene photo, the location where she was, the sun is shining on that area. But the location where she was eventually found is concealed by the shadows of all these large trees. And we know that her hand was pretty much touching one of these large trees. That's the tree that he used to conceal them. He said, I'm going to hide them behind these trees right here. That's why they're placed the way they are. All he's trying to do is block the view from the private drive. And if you look at the crime scene photos, which I don't recommend if you have seen them already, right? I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying, those of you who have, you will notice, or even any of these diagrams that are out, the sticks are on the side of the private drive. That's why the killer did that. That's why Richard Allen put those sticks there the way he did. He was trying to conceal them. You can say, well, why didn't he cover them completely? Because he spent so much time in the army, he knew that all he had to do was kind of camouflage them, break up the shapes. Not to mention, we're talking about somebody who is panicked. Yeah, that's what I would do now, but I don't blame them for doing what they did. Anna says, in all fairness, even very good girls like Abby and Libby might take off with friends and lose track of time. Reasonable to think they were likely okay. Well, especially after you've just searched the area for 3 hours, right? Like, hey, we just searched this whole area. I don't, they're not here. And if they are here, they're not living because we've been yelling, we've been hollering. It's safe to say that the girls aren't here. And if they are here, there's nothing we can do about it until, the daylight. What's up, Dark Side? They started searching for them quick. Didn't have to wait on an Amber Alert. I was surprised so many looking so quick. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole small town vibe, right? And I don't know if they did cancel the search dogs. I don't know if that was ever confirmed. I know that they called in the search dogs. I just don't think they got there in time. I think they ended up getting there early the next morning. I think they called them in from, I want to say, Kentucky. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, hindsight, right? It's 2020. Hey, Sean, what's up? Law enforcement went to Indiana Packers early on in the investigation and took out boots. They were onto something. Must have been footprints at the crime scene. That's what I was assuming. What's up, Miss Joel? All right, guys, let's continue on here. We're going to move on to evidence analysis. Collected evidence is sent to forensic labs. This can include DNA testing, ballistics, if a firearm was used, toxicology reports or digital forensics, for example, phone records. The goal is to link the suspect to the crime or victim. Smells like bacon. You guys smell that? That reminds me of Wayne's World. Ha ha, piggy piggy, oink oink. I used to do that shit when I was your age. All right, so that's pretty simple, right? Evidence analysis. Collecting evidence. Collected evidence is sent to forensic labs. This can include DNA testing, ballistics, if a firearm was used, toxicology report, or digital forensics, for example, phone records. The goal is to link the suspect to the crime or the victim. YouTube Bad Actor says, I'd have to say this is the most important part of the investigation. Well, when it comes to Abby and Libby, we know that a huge part of their case revolved around the unspent shell. The killer did not, that wasn't his method of murder. It wasn't to kill Abby and Libby with a gun. He used it for controlling purposes. But while doing that, he did drop an unspent shell. Or a cartridge. Which proved to be extremely important. And that would fall under ballistics. Karen Hicks says, I think KK was involved. Why do you think that, Karen? I tend to agree with you. Hey, lunch break, vegetable soup and crackers. Yeah, man, sounds good. Got to go back to work. Just wanted to stop in. Hey, everyone, have a great day. Sean, you have a great day. Thanks for dropping a comment, Sean. Yep, just like Koberger with the sheath. So that would have a combination, right? Bad actors, crime scene examination, and evidence analysis. Okay, this is where we come in, and this is why the online sleuth is so important. Developing a theory. Investigators piece together the evidence, witness statements, and forensic results to form a hypothesis about how and why the murder. This includes establishing a motive, for example, revenge, jealousy, financial gain. Yeah, that's true. I just don't understand why he would be involved and then confess to being there. Very strange. Hey, Chester. Is it possible Brad Weber's van was driving away after picking up the girls at the access road? I don't think so. Because the phone was already across the creek at 2:32 and did not move. So that means the girls would have had to throw the phone over, and the data would have showed that as well. Like the data shows that the girls actually went down the hill, that the phone was dropping in elevation, and exactly where it ended up is where the data was telling the investigative team pretty much exactly what happened with the phone. The phone's not connected to the girls, so we don't know 100% if they were killed at that time, but it does suggest that, right? To me, that tells me the exact moment the girls made it across the creek, and that's when he started giving them instructions and directing them to do whatever he was having them do. Kate says, I think Racking did not realize he dropped that spent cartridge. I don't think so either. I think his adrenaline was off the charts. I think he was a madman at that point in time. I think he was completely out of his mind. He was probably even growling at some points. like a maniac. He totally lost it. Anybody that's going to give up their entire future, their life, and destroy these two young lives, I mean, they're just in a fit of rage. No, they're not thinking about consequences. I think that would apply to the cartridge too, right? All he's thinking about is controlling these victims. You're not getting away from me. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to control you, even if that includes intimidation. There wasn't really any defensive marks on the victim, so we know that there wasn't any kind of a real struggle. Yep, also perversion. Yeah, I don't even think he realized it, honestly. Possibly after the fact, kind of like Brian Koberger coming back to the crime scene, like, oh shit. I mean, there's probably a lot of information that we don't know and will never know. For all we know, Richard Allen came back to the crime scene. Necessary Evil says, it's so weird to me that he racked the gun on the bridge that the unspent round was found so far away. Well, that's not the same cartridge. In my opinion, the chamber was empty, right? Chamber's empty, walks up to the girls, racks his gun. Now there's a bullet in the chamber. Forces them down the hill. They cross the creek. They're not doing what he says. They might be even, talking about, hey, let's just take off. He racks the gun again for the purposes of intimidation, and there's the unspent bullet now. So the same bullet that was found at the crime scene was the same bullet that was loaded into the weapon on the bridge initially. Hey, what's up, Boston? Well, think about it, Necessary Evil. If the bullet that he put into the chamber on the south side of the bridge ends up at the crime scene, that means that a bullet from his magazine is now in the chamber. So the bullet that was now placed into the chamber after he lost the one at the crime scene, that's the bullet that he would keep in the keepsake box as a memento, as a trophy even. What's up, Your Majesty? Yeah, no need for force, really. Just intimidation, and you can tell by that video that the girls were scared frozen. He said go down the hill, and you can already see Abby's complying. I'm assuming that down the hill may open up some options for us, right? It's better than up here. There's absolutely nowhere for us to go up here. If we go down the hill, we have a road. We're familiar with it. It was listed in the Discovery Necessary Evil, but I don't think they ever mentioned it during the trial. Andy says bullet was left on purpose as a calling card. Could be. It could have been Richard Allen's ignorance on full display. In his mind, he could have said, well, I didn't fire it, so they're not going to be able to get any ballistics from it. Not thinking that the ejector was going to leave tool marks. He could have left it as a calling card for sure, Andy. Thinking, hey, the only way that they're going to tie this to me is if I actually fire the gun, right? So, yeah, you might be right. Yep. Around the pool table, dark side. You can see that pent up energy. Kate List says he racked it into an empty chamber on the bridge. Later, he racked it out. Later, empty gun or to intimidate. And there it was. and he spaced it. Yep. And then when he got home, he took the bullet out of the chamber and he says, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to put this right here. That's the way it plays out in my head. Yeah, and everybody says, well, why did the prosecution, why did they fire the gun? They had to fire the gun to get the tool marks. Okay, well, how did Richard Allen leave his tool marks? We don't know. You guys hang tight right there before we get into interrogation and arrest. I'm going to go refill my coffee. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, guys, I am back. I'm back and badder than ever. Yeah, they were terrified. And we'll get into that in the second half. Kate says, I don't think he ever went back to the crime scene, in my opinion. Too much of a coward. Yeah. I mean, that's what I think as well, but it is possible, just using that as an example of things that we may not even know. That's possible. I think when it comes to Brian Koberger, that was a huge mistake on his part. I mean, think about it. He wouldn't even be in jail right now. Hey, Diane, do you have any idea where the phone is that Richard Allen had on him that day? I think it's possible it's somewhere in Delphi or somewhere in Mexico. I think that it was a burner phone. I think the information that was provided to Dan Doolin had nothing to do with the phone that he had on him at the time of the murders. I think he used that phone to take video and photographs of Abby and Libby. I think before and after. I just don't think he could have gotten rid of it. Along with the trophies. They're looking for a pair of underwear and a sock. I agree, Kate. Honestly, if I was anywhere near Delphi right now, I'd be looking at those the trails behind CVS. I'd be looking somewhere near the trail system over there across the street by Pizza Hut. Um, I would be asking to search a little bit further at his home on Whiteman Drive, and also his mother's home in Mexico. A lot of times, killers will keep trophies so they don't have to commit the murder again. Right? If I just hold this item, I can fantasize and relive the crime whenever I need to. But in order to do that, I need to make sure it's accessible and in a place where nobody's going to stumble across it and nobody's going to see me doing weird shit with it. You know, if he's smart, he would have gotten rid of it. But we know Richard Allen's not smart because he didn't get rid of his gun. Why couldn't he get rid of his gun? Because he had an attachment to it. It was like something special to him. And I'm thinking he probably received that firearm. It probably reminded him of the military. YouTube ad actor says, or the phone was given to KK. Maybe it wasn't even hooked up to cellular, just used to video. Yeah. I think you might be right. Yeah, that's true, Dark Side. Yeah, that's what my intuition says. Yeah, Israel Keys, what a strange character. He would hide caches and then would access those caches even 2 years later. He'd have knives, guns, duct tape, rope, everything you would need to commit that kind of a crime. I did, Boston. I did. I did and I do. They should check around his mom's house also because I think she is part of the reason he resorted to red rum. I agree. I think that fits the profile. Mama issues, his father abandoning him as a child, and then his stepfather probably didn't treat him very well. I've talked to some people who grew up with him. They said he's the quietest guy they have ever met. Like he literally didn't say one word. To me, that tells me he's in his head. Like he's alive in the real world, but he's living in fantasy land. Yep. All right, so let's move on, guys, to interrogation and arrest. Once a suspect is identified, they may be brought in for questioning. Based on evidence and confessions, if obtained, an arrest is made if there's sufficient probable cause. That's up to a judge to decide. Yep. Kate says phone is in a little special box somewhere. I like buried near that trail behind CVS, that area Sleuth pointed out, maybe with trophies. Yep. Someplace he's comfortable with. Just like the Monon High Bridge. You know, he selected that area for a reason. If he still has those trophies, they're going to be somewhere very similar to that. He's going to use the same method of selecting that area. Okay, so that brings us to case preparation and prosecution. The investigation culminates in a detailed report handed over to prosecutors. They decide whether or not to press charges, and the case may proceed to trial, where evidence and testimony are presented. Yeah, that's that psychopathy vibe. It's that superficial charm. That's your intuition, Boston. Who's that? I don't think Richard Allen was a trucker. He traveled for work. She's talking about Israel Keys, bad actors. Okay, so let's get into the victimology. Okay, victimology is the context of a murder investigation, refers to the study of the victims, their characteristics, lifestyles, relationships, circumstances that may have contributed to their targeting or vulnerability. In the case of the Delphi murders, the victims were Abby Williams and Libby German, or Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Here is an overview of their victimology. Okay, so the background of the victims. Abby, born June 23rd, 2003. Abby was 13 years old at the time of her death on February 13th, 2017. She was an eighth grader at Delphi Community Middle School in Delphi, Indiana, a small town of about 3,000 residents. Abby was described as a quiet, artistic girl who enjoyed crafts, painting, and playing volleyball. She lived with her mother, Anna Williams, and was known to be close to her family and friends. Liberty German, born December 27th, 2002. Libby was 14 years old when she was killed, also an eighth grader at the same school. Libby was outgoing, athletic, and loved softball, volleyball, and music. She lived with her grandparents, Mike and Becky Patty, who raised her, along with her older sister, Kelsey German. Libby was known for her strong personality and sense of responsibility. Okay, let's talk about relationship and lifestyle. Abby and Libby were best friends who shared a tight bond, often spending time together at school. They were typical middle schoolers in a rural community, engaging in activities like sports, hiking, and socializing with peers. Their lifestyles were not high risk. No evidence suggests involvement in drugs, gangs, or other dangerous activities that might typically increase vulnerability to violent crime. Some might argue that because of their parents, but the truth is, Abby's mother was very hardworking, stayed busy, had a strong family bond, lived with, I think, her with multiple family members. And Libby was in the care of Mike and Becky Patty, who were both hardworking and very stable people. They were dropped off by Kelsey German near the Monon High Bridge on February 13th, 2017, to enjoy a day off from school due to an unused snow day. This outing was a spontaneous, innocent activity in a familiar public place, the Delphi Historic Trails, suggesting they were not engaging in behavior that would obviously attract danger. Now, remember, guys, we're taking a look at the case. We're doing it by the book. We're not speculating, we're not theorizing, and we're definitely not using our intuition or trusting our gut or our instincts. We're just looking at it for what it is. Okay, circumstances of the crime, location, and timing. The girls were last seen alive around 1:35 p.m. on February 13th, 2017, near the Monon High Bridge, an abandoned railroad bridge popular with locals for hiking and photography. Right? Richard Allen's daughter is known for taking photos there. A lot of people would take their graduation, wedding photos, prom, things like that. Their bodies were found the next day, February 14th, about a half a mile from the bridge in a wooded area, indicating they were lured and forced off the trail. Evidence from Libby's phone. The girls recorded a man, later dubbed the Bridge Guy, on Libby's phone, capturing his image and voice saying down the hill moments before their deaths. This suggests they may have sensed danger, with Libby possibly documenting the encounter as a precaution. And I believe that more today than I did, before the video was officially released. Yeah, you can say the same thing with Ted Bundy, Charles. Okay, the manner of death. Both girls died from cuts to the throat, a violent and personal method of killing that implies close proximity to their attacker. The crime scene was described as staged, with sticks placed over the bodies, though no signs of sexual assault were reported. And that doesn't include the girls being nude. We're talking about semen and signs of physical sexual assault. So that's our basic victimology right there. Okay. So what have we learned from the victimology analysis? Abby and Libby's victimology indicates low inherent risk. They were young, female, and in a small, tight-knit community where violent crime was rare. However, their age and gender made them potentially vulnerable to opportunistic predators. Being together might have offered some perceived safety, but it did not deter the killer, suggesting boldness or planning. Okay. Opportunity. The isolated trail provided a secluded setting, increasing their exposure to somebody looking for victims. The daytime setting, afternoon, and public nature of the trails suggest the perpetrator was comfortable acting in a familiar area, possibly a local or someone with knowledge of the terrain. Targeting. It's unclear if the girls were specifically targeted or victims of opportunity. Their youth and lack of prior high risk behavior lean towards the latter, an attacker seizing a chance encounter. However, the brutality and staging could imply a more calculated motive. Though no clear personal connection to the suspect, Richard Allen, has been publicly established beyond his proximity to the crime scene. Yeah, Charles, I think they were in a cult, actually, a religious cult. Yep, age and gender definitely play a part in the victimology. Well, cutting somebody's throat is very personal, especially when you have a gun right there. Would have made things so easy for him, but it may have gotten him arrested right away. Vegas says, I don't think KK was involved. I think it was all Richard Allen had one fake profile, and he could have made another one like KK did to go after young girls. Yeah, you might be right. Okay, so what would be the suspect's connection? Richard Allen, a 52-year-old Delphi resident and pharmacy technician, was convicted of the murders in November of 2024. He lived and worked locally, admitting to being on the trails that day. A bullet from his gun was found near the bodies, though no DNA directly tied him to the scene. His confessions, over 60 while incarcerated, included details like planning a sexual assault but fleeing after seeing a van. This suggests the girls may have been random victims of a thwarted predatory intent rather than individuals specifically chosen due to personal ties. All right. But before we get into the criminology, let's sum it all up here, guys. Abby Williams and Libby German were typical teenage girls whose victimology reflects vulnerability due to age, gender, and the isolated setting of the crime rather than lifestyle choices or personal enemies. Their deaths appear to stem from an opportunistic encounter with the local predator Richard Allen, whose familiarity with with the bridge likely aided his ability to act undetected. Their recordings of the suspect underscores their awareness and bravery, ultimately aiding the investigation that led to his conviction. All right, you guys have anything to add to the victimology before we get into criminology? I think you're right, Boston. I think you're right. Be a case study for many critical thinking classes to come. That's for sure. Kate List says, I just find Richard Allen's behavior during the entire trial pretty bizarre, like another day playing pool at the bar. Well, remember the story that Holman told? He said that Richard Allen would write something on a post it, show it to his attorneys, and then eat it in the courtroom. That's not normal. Yeah, I agree with that, bad actors. Absolutely, Boston. And remember, when it comes to predators, they know about technology. They know about all the advanced technology. They probably know how to hack. They've gone through trial and error on how to get to your kids. It's chess for them. You know, they're trying to find a weakness. And then once they find that weakness, they'll exploit it. And then they're in. And all it takes is convincing one person, and then that one person will do the convincing for the others. Right? So if Libby was lured to the bridge that day by Anthony Schatz, all it took was Anthony Schatz to convince a Libby. Then from there on, she'll convince everybody else. You know, she'll do the convincing. And I think that's what happened with Abby. She did not want to be on that bridge, but Libby convinced her. Like, hey, I really want to do this. You know, I'm hoping that I can meet this guy. And I can't do it alone. You know, you're my best friend. I need you here. So Abby's saying, okay, I am your best friend and you owe me one. So I'm going to cross this fucking scary bridge because deep down I want to cross it, but I'm terrified of it, but I'll do it for you. And it's not like Libby could go around telling Becky like, hey, we're going to go meet some guy that I met online at the trails today. You know, they're not going to do that. So these killers, that's what the whole grooming process is about. It's about gaining their trust. I mean, there's some cases that I covered where the victim was groomed for years. And typically they're not grooming just one person. You know, they're casting a wide net and they're finding out who they're going to have the most control over. Annis is considering Richard Allen as offender. Well, he is. I think we need to add long-term mental illness into the mix: depression, anxiety, alcohol, psychosis, and the time of the crime. Well, let's see if we can fit that in here. Yeah, you might be right, Anna. Might be right. Can you send me that information, Boston, to my email? I think I saw something come up recently about that. Okay, so we've gone through Investigations 101. We've gone through the first half, which is the Victimology. Let's move on to Criminology. Okay, so Criminology in the context of the Delphi murders involves analyzing the crime, the offender, and the broader social and environmental factors through the lens of criminological theories and principles. The Delphi murders refer to the killings of Abby Williams, Liberty German, on February 13th, 2017, near the Monon High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana. Richard Allen, a local resident, was convicted of the murders in November of 2024. So let's go ahead and let's do an overview of the crime. Okay, the details. Abby and Libby were killed during a daytime hike on a public trail. Evidence includes a video and audio recording of the suspect, captured by Libby, an unspent .40 caliber bullet linked to Allen's gun found near the bodies, and a staged crime scene, sticks placed over the bodies. The cause of death was cuts to the throat, suggesting a personal violent act. Hey, Stephanie. Charles says there's lots of messed up cops. I think there's just lots of messed up people. I call it 1 out of 10. It's my philosophy. It doesn't matter what you're doing. 1 out of 10 of your neighbors is a predator, a killer, whatever. 1 out of 10 police officers, same thing. 1 out of 10 school teachers, same thing. 1 out of 10 of your friends, classmates, whatever. No matter what you're doing, 1 out of 10 is going to be a Richard Allen. Vegas says, if the girls were meeting Anthony Schatz at the bridge, Sleuth, then why do you think they crossed the bridge when they could have just waited there? They may have been told to cross the bridge. It may have been their idea to cross the bridge. In the video, it sounds like Libby saying, and this is where we go down the hill, as if, she crosses the bridge and has gone down that hill before. We hear about the geocache, or not the geocache. What is it? Yeah, the geocache. Sorry. I almost thought I was saying geofence. So we know that there's geocaches, boxes out there somewhere, and that could have just been somewhere that she liked to go. If I were their age, I would love to cross that bridge. I would have spent most of my time on that south side of the bridge, most likely under the bridge, smoking pot or, doing something stupid, just hanging out, maybe doing a little bit of graffiti up under there or just hanging out, And if I saw somebody coming up the private drive, I'd just hide. Or maybe, just go down the hill, go check out the shoe tree. That area is so vast. There's a million reasons why they wanted to cross that bridge. Could have wanted to cross that bridge. But it sounds most likely it was Libby. She wanted to cross that bridge. She's the one taking a video for somebody, right? Yep, there you go, Cyber. 1 out of 10 pastors. You can apply that to anything. You put 10 people in a room, one of them is a bad person. Evil. Yeah, bad actors. According to Jerry Holman, he witnessed it. He witnessed Richard Allen scribble something on a Post-it note, slide it across the table to show his defense team. They read it. He picked it up and he ate it in court. And that's not normal. Hey, Jessica Mendoza. What's up, Jessica? Good to see you. Mental illness can be a contributing factor. A lot of times it has to do with abuse as a child. You mix that with mental illness and then some kind of injury to the frontal lobe. You have a higher probability of becoming a murderer. It's just the way it is. You know, mental health, there's definitely a stigma there for sure. Yeah, keep your eyes open. There's been some murder cases that were solved where the neighbor had hopped the back fence, killed the young kid, hopped back into their home, and acted as if it never happened. Yeah, there was another case where this guy was walking up the street and somebody that he knew and liked was out on their porch. It was a girl. She was drinking a beer and they started talking and she invited him over like, "Hey, you want to come sit down on the porch with me?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay, here, you want to crack a beer?" Sure. They're just sitting there talking. And for whatever reason, when she gets up and she says, "All right, well, I got to go in and, I got to take care of a few things. You have a great day." Says, "All right, thanks for the beer. Thanks for the chat. I'll see you later." But for whatever reason, the moment that she opened her door, he decided to push her in and kill her, rape her and kill her. Why? And then when they interviewed him in prison years later, he said that he's never had any feelings. He's never been a normal person. He doesn't know why he killed her. He felt an urge. So I don't know about you. I just don't know how you protect your family from people like that, especially when they've been hiding in plain sight their entire lives. Like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, people like that who torture animals and light things on fire and do all this sick shit. They learn at an early age that it's not normal. That's why you have people like Rex Heuermann becoming pen pals with the Happy Face killer. Who's that? Bit Rolf. Yep. Childhood trauma. Okay, let's take a look at the perpetrator. Richard Allen, 52 at the time of his conviction, was a married pharmacy technician with no significant prior criminal record. He lived and worked in Delphi, admitting to being on the trails that day. Okay. Crime occurs when a motivated offender, a suitable target, and the absence of a capable guardian converge in time and space. Wrong place at the wrong time. Motivated offender. Allen, possibly driven by sexual or violent impulses. He confessed to planning a sexual assault but fleeing after seeing a van. Fits as the offender seeking opportunity. Okay. Searching for a suitable target. Abby and Libby, young and alone on an isolated trail, were vulnerable due to their age and lack of immediate protection. Absence of a guardian. The secluded Monon High Bridge area had no adults or authorities present, creating an unguarded environment. Let's provide some insight. The crime aligns with an opportunistic act facilitated by the girl's routine activity, hiking, intersecting with Alan's presence. Okay, let's take a rational approach. Offenders weigh the risks and rewards before committing a crime. Allen's choice of a familiar, sparsely populated trail during daylight suggests he calculated the low risk of immediate detection in a small town where he blended in. His use of a knife, quiet, no ballistic trace, and fleeing after spotting a van indicate a degree of planning and risk assessment. The staging of the scene, covering the bodies, may reflect an attempt to delay discovery, further supporting a rational approach to avoiding capture. Criminal behavior is learned through observation, imitation, and reinforcement. Allen had no known violent history, but his exposure to violent media, cultural norms, personal fantasies, which are unconfirmed, could have shaped his behaviors. His his confessions mentioning a sexual motivated suggest internal drives possibly reinforced over time. Without a clear criminal past, his actions might stem from a private escalation of deviant thoughts rather than a learned pattern from peers. So, psychological and psychopathic traits. Some offenders exhibit traits like lack of empathy, impulsivity, or thrill seeking behavior. The brutality of throat cutting and scene staging hint at a psychological profile beyond a typical opportunist. Allen's ability to live a normal life, married, employed, while committing such an act suggests compartmentalization or latent psychopathic tendencies, though no formal diagnosis has been publicized. Yeah, I believe he did. He got them wet and then ate them. Boston, the government stepping in is, well, they never make anything safer. If anything, the government needs to get further away and we need to get the private sector more involved. I don't think you should use the government and safety in the same sentence. Yep, absolutely. I used to be emotional and feel for people till some people in my life tainted that. And I live in regret for a lot of shit. But even feeling blank most days, I would never want to cause somebody pain. Well, Andy, it's because you understand pain. You understand that pain. People with psychopathy, most of them don't understand what you're talking about. They hear about it, but they've never experienced it. The only time they ever experience pain or emotion is when something is happening to them, when they're the victim, when they're the focal point of the conversation. That's it. They don't know what it's like to feel pain because of others. Yeah, most people have been eating shit their entire lives and didn't even know it. Violent corn. I love corn. You got to put the K backwards, though. What do you mean, dark side time of day? Yeah, he has dependent. He has a dependent personality disorder, which requires a target. His target is Kathy. And remember, she was checked out because of her brother's death. So if she checked out, maybe he checked out. Somebody hacked into her brother's Facebook. Who would do that? Probably Richard Allen, who was pissed off that her dead brother was getting all of his attention. All of the attention that belonged to him from his wife was going over to his dead brother-in-law. Boston says, Sleuth, could the government somehow make the internet safer for our children? Yeah, but I think parents should be doing that. And the government should just help facilitate it. But yeah, I mean, I remember being a teenage boy walking through the deserts here in Phoenix, and a page from like a Playboy would come blowing down the trail, and I'd be like, "Oh my god." And that one page from a Playboy would be coveted by me and like 4 of my friends, you know? It's my turn with the page, or, stop hogging the page. Nowadays, children, all they got to do is log online and they got access to Pornhub. So yeah, you're definitely right about that, Boston. Corruption is definitely out of control. Well, the thing, Stephanie, is he's already in segregation. Nobody's going to be able to see his paperwork. Everybody knows what Richard Allen's in there for. So he doesn't need to eat his paperwork. He's already locked up with the child molesters and all of that. No need to hide your paperwork. There's nobody to hide it from. What are you going to have Kagan Klein walk in there and be like, "Let me see your paperwork"? It's like, no, let me see yours, bitch. You're locked up with snitches and child abusers and state witnesses. Well, right now, bad actor, she's being used. She's being used by the defense team and as a tool. That's literally some Beavis and Butthead shit there. Laugh my ass off. A hustler page flying through a trail and then fighting over it. Absolutely. That's what we used to do. We couldn't just log on to our computer and be like, "Oh my gosh." Like, you don't have to do anything. It's like, "Are you 18?" You click yes. Okay, his 60 plus confessions in custody, some inconsistent, might reflect manipulation, guilt, or a need for attention, common in certain personality disorders. Okay, the offender profile and behavior. Typology. Allen could be classified as an unorganized offender. And that's what the FBI had profiled the killer as an organized offender. Sorry. Familiarity with the area, carrying a weapon, gun or a knife, or gun and a knife, and staging the scene. Remember, there was no DNA there. Luring or forcing the girls down the hill and killing them efficiently. returning to normal life, avoiding suspicion for years. Let's touch on the motive. Unclear, but likely sexual or power driven. Allen's confession about the thwarted sexual assault suggests predation. Though no assault occurred, possibly due to interruption, the van, or a shift to violence for control or thrill. Some of his advantages. As a Delphi resident, Allen's knowledge of the trails and community, trust working at the CVS, allowed him to act and evade early detection, hiding in plain sight. Yeah, I agree with that, Cyber Warrior. I don't know necessary. Why didn't she take the stand? I guess that's why the Sears catalog is no longer printed. Kids can see real corn online instead of the underwear pages in the catalog, and toilet paper got invented. Yeah, that's all he cares about is Kathy. I think that's why he killed Abby and Libby. He may have even considered that cheating. Okay, social and environmental context. Small town dynamics. Delphi's population of 3,000 fostered a low crime environment where residents felt safe, reducing their vigilance. This may have emboldened Allen, who blended into the community. The Monon High Bridge, while a local attraction, was isolated enough to limit witnesses, aligning with environmental criminology's focus on crime hotspots, places offering opportunity due to a low guardianship. Right? John Douglas says the moment they cross that bridge, they place themselves in a high risk location. Libby's recording disrupted the offender's expectations of anonymity, reflecting how modern tools can shift power in victim-offender dynamics, right? It's that variable. Investigation and outcome. Here's some of the challenges. The case lingered unsolved for over 5 years due to limited initial evidence, a vague suspect sketch, and the killer's introgation into the community. Allen was overlooked despite admitting in 2017 to being on the trails. His statement was misplaced until 2022. Now, the unspent bullet, confessions, and witness corroboration. For example, Allen's wife confirming his gun ownership led to his arrest in October of 2022 and conviction in November of 2024. What can we learn? The delay highlights issues in rural policing, resource constraints, and oversight, and the difficulty of identifying hidden offenders without overt criminal histories. So we need to stop assuming because people have no criminal history that they're not going to commit a murder or they're not likely to. That's just not how it works. Okay, let's summarize this and then we'll get into the intuitive side of things. The criminology of the Delphi murders points to an opportunistic yet calculated act by Richard Allen, a local with no prior red flags, exploiting a convergence of vulnerable victims and an unguarded setting. Routine activity and rational choice theories best frame the crime, with psychological factors possibly amplifying his intent. The case underscores how small town familiarity can mask danger and how victim initiative, Libby's recording, can ultimately tip the scales towards justice. right? Same with GPS technology. I should have added that. Allen's conviction reflects both the triumph of persistent investigation and the challenge of detecting latent predators in plain sight. Okay, so that'll do it. Let's open up the discussion now. So basically, what we just did is we've gone through what the investigative team most likely, how they approached the case, using their training, using their tools, and not trusting their gut so much. Okay, here is a piece of an article that I grabbed, and it was titled Detective's Intuition. Little is known about the decision making processes of homicide detectives. This study is the first step towards understanding the inferential processes they engage in during the initial stages of an investigation. A card sorting exercise consisting of 20 crime scene photographs showing homicide victims in situations was designed to examine how detectives categorize and conceptualize homicide crime scenes. 40 homicide detectives were asked to think aloud whilst categorizing the crime scenes. Qualitative content analysis of the think aloud accounts revealed detectives' intuitive ability to automatically make detailed inferences regarding the circumstances surrounding each homicide on the basis of available crime scene information, victim sex, location, and method of death. A cycle of cognition was evident whereby detectives drew upon the contextual information available to generate hypotheses regarding homicide type, domestic, male brawl, and crime related, and derive inferences about victim offender relationship, offender behavior, motive, and whether the offense was spontaneous or planned. The detectives made 594 inferences, of which 67% were accurate. The sorting exercise proved to be ecologically valid, with detectives reporting that they assessed and interpreted the homicide crime scenes as they would in an actual investigation. The implications for police training and offender profiling research are discussed. Now let's go to John Douglas. See what he has to say here.
You ever feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up? That's your intuition, and you should listen to it.
You ever feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up? That's your intuition. You should listen to it.
Your intuition, how you feel, that gut feeling, could very well save your life.
All right, so let's get into that. So we're going to go ahead and transition from Investigations 101 to using our intuition and what it tells us to fill in these gaps, right? We don't know anything about the Delphi murders other than Richard Allen was involved and was the bridge guy. We don't know why he was motivated. We don't know if the girls were lured there. We don't know if Anthony Schatz is connected. What does your intuition tell you? All right. So I want you guys to go ahead and tell me what you think in the chat. I'll be right back. All right, guys. So once we catch up on the chat, we will get out of here. What do you mean, Stephanie? I mean, it's not a hard concept. He's in segregation, and that's where they put the child offenders. Now, the reason that you're not in general population is because people will demand your paperwork. So if you're a child offender and they ask for your paperwork and it shows that you have charges or you have convictions that include assault on children, then they'll kick your ass and then they'll send you, probably try to kill you, and then they'll send you to segregation. So there's no reason to hide your paperwork in segregation. One day, bad actors, I think. I just don't see Richard Allen ever coming forward. Maybe. If his wife divorces him, if she takes that initiative, he'll talk. But he's not going to initiate anything that's going to cause her to leave him, in my opinion. Yep. Yeah, they're not blind to the world, especially if something's on like mainstream television. Shel Silverstein did cartoons for Playboy, Anna, and always wrote great children's books. Laugh out loud. I agree. Yeah, it's possible. I'm telling you, there's so much that we don't know about this case. I mean, what do we really know? All we know is that Richard Allen is the bridge guy. That's it. Dark Side, being such a small town, first time he's seen and heard that video, he probably about had a stroke. Well, after the murders, according to his own defense team, he called his what was it, his benefits manager for CVS. So he probably thought he was going to go to prison. He's like, I'm going to get arrested any moment now. Tools or gut plus lost information. They had a terrible time even identifying a suspect. Absolutely. Guess the offender rationalized the crime and went into a state of denial like it never happened. I think he probably blamed it on somebody else. He probably somehow justified it in his mind. I just don't think he was bothered by it. He wouldn't have done it, if it bothered him. The only thing that conflicts me about John Douglas is the John Benet Ramsey case. Yep, that's true, bad actors. There's people who adopt children just to abuse them as well. Put them right into the sex trade. I don't know. I don't remember that part, about John Douglas necessary. But if you want to email me something, I think that would be a good conversation. We've covered the West Memphis 3 case a few times on my channel. That's one of the cases that got me into true crime. Yeah, you could be right, CJK. What does your gut tell you? So now it was random victims? What do you mean? Are you asking me if that's my position? You know what my position is. Darkside says your gut feeling is usually based on emotion. Who don't always want to trust your gut, in my opinion. Could be. That's what I mean. I thought he was in segregation on a separate wing. Yeah, he has. I'm just telling you, Stephanie, there's no reason for him to eat his paperwork to conceal it. Nobody has access to his paperwork. They all know why he's there. He's Richard Allen. He's the most high profile inmate they have at the moment. They don't need his paperwork to know what he's there for. I agree, Cyber. I don't think he'll ever admit it. There's no reason to. There's no motivation for it. Because it might even be worse for him. For all we know, let's say others were involved. Let's say the Kleins are involved. He finally snitches on them. They come forward and then they snitch on him for other crimes that they did, years ago. I don't know necessarily. I think he was focusing mostly on Abby and not falling on the bridge. I don't think he noticed her. It almost appears as if she was hiding it pretty good. Okay, he told them he was there because those girls saw him entering the trails. Growing Crazy says, my gut has saved my life. My intuition says KK is involved due to the facts and KK's actions during that time and speaking more than words. Then he confessed to being there at a specific time. I'm right there with you. Yep, and I think people in general, I think we're all connected. We're just kind of losing our way. Or they're being, our tools are being dulled, taken away from us systematically through subversion. Anybody else here that Baldy went to speak to Reese? What do you mean? I thought he's been talking with them. You're saying they have a new interview? Yeah, it could be. That's kind of weird, and I don't think I've ever heard that. I don't know why a defense attorney would tell somebody to eat their paperwork. Wouldn't they just say, I'll take it for you? All right, guys, I think that's going to do it. I think that's going to wrap it up. So I want to give a big shout out to all of you who caught the live stream. Sorry about last night. It's nothing I could do about it. We will be live again later this evening for an open panel. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to address me directly if they would like to. And if not, it's always good to see you guys again. So thank you. If you are a member of my channel, you guys are the heartbeat. Couldn't do it without you. Those of you who continue to donate to the Cash App, the Venmo, the Zelle, thank you very much. All of my subscribers and all of you who share and talk about the channel in a positive light, thank you so much. And if you're part of that replay crew, you know exactly what to do. Drop a comment and we'll get back to you. Peace out, guys.